They told me the trip was off. Then I saw their smiles from a Maui beach. No warning, no explanation. Just a bright, sun-soaked photo on Evan's Instagram, captioned, "Best family vacation ever." They were all there. Karen in her blue sun hat, Greg holding a cocktail with a tiny umbrella, Evan and Lucy flashing peace signs in the surf. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the screen, the taste of cold tea on my tongue, a blueberry scone uneaten on my plate. Just 2 weeks ago, Karen had told me the trip was canceled. "Too much going on at work, Mom. Greg's firm is restructuring, and I can't take time off either. We're just going to do something local this year, maybe a barbecue." She smiled through the phone, and I smiled back, though my chest had already tightened. I'd been looking forward to it for months. Not for Hawaii. I'd seen plenty of beaches in my younger years. But for being included. For mattering enough to be counted. I hadn't even asked to come. That's the part that stings. It was Karen who brought it up back in March. "We'll all go. A big family thing. You'll love Maui, Mom. You and Lucy can do spa days while the rest of us surf." I remember blinking at the screen when she told me. Me? On a plane? In a swimsuit? It sounded absurd and wonderful. I started walking more, trying to get my legs ready for travel. I bought a new sun hat, navy, with a little white ribbon, just in case. Then, the cancellation. Polite, rushed, and absolute. But now here they were, half a world away, with drinks and lays and smiles that didn't seem to miss me at all. I zoomed in on the photo. Behind Evan's shoulder, I could see the curve of the resort's infinity pool, the very one Karen had once shown me on a hotel website saying, "You'll love the view, Mom. You can see the sunset from the water." I'd imagined it more than once since. I sat back in my chair. The photo glowed on the screen, the blue of the ocean so bright it almost looked fake. I closed the laptop. Maybe Evan had posted it by mistake. Maybe they were going to tell me. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like, but it was. I didn't call anyone. I didn't cry either. Not at first. Instead, I sat there, listening to the clock tick on the kitchen wall. It had been George's, back when he was still timing Sunday roasts and checking on the garden hose. Now it just ticked for me. By evening, I'd found more photos. Karen holding a plate of shrimp with some flour around her neck. Lucy in a beach hammock, reading a book I'd given her. Greg at the bar, smiling too wide. My whole family on vacation. My whole family, minus me. They didn't forget. They didn't run out of tickets. They didn't think I couldn't handle it. They just didn't want me there. That's what made the tears finally come. Slow and hot and quiet. I wiped them away with the back of my hand, feeling embarrassed, even though no one was watching. The hurt wasn't just about the trip. It was older, deeper, harder to name. I'd been pushing it down for years, every time Karen said she was too busy to stop by, every time Greg sighed when I didn't understand something on his iPad, every time Lucy texted instead of calling. But now it had a face. A warm, smiling, sun-tanned face. And I had a choice. The next morning, I didn't turn on the news or bake scones, or do any of the quiet little things that fill up my days. I opened the file cabinet in the hallway, the one George had labeled important in his neat, blocky handwriting, and pulled out every envelope that had my name and a dollar sign. If they could lie to me this easily, this fully, what else had I let slide? I was going to find out. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of rage, that's not my way, but out of something heavier. I lay in bed with the fan whirring above me and the sound of the neighbor's dog barking twice around midnight. My mind ran in quiet, steady circles. The way Karen smiled in that photo, how relaxed Greg looked with his feet in the sand, the white strap of Lucy's bikini top and the book in her hand. The very copy of Pride and Prejudice I'd wrapped for her last Christmas, with a ribbon and a note. They hadn't just gone without me. They'd gone with the best of me. The things I gave them, the love I'd bundled into books and recipes and reminders to wear sunscreen. And they left me here. By morning, I'd made coffee but forgot to drink it. The kitchen smelled like toast I never made. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened Evan's Instagram again, this time not to stare at the beach, but to see what else I'd missed. There were more posts now. A short video, Karen and Lucy doing a silly hula dance at a luau, a photo of Greg wearing a ridiculous straw hat, beer in hand, a shot of a hotel breakfast, papaya, pancakes, and a sprig of mint on the side, all dated yesterday, all tagged Chuck Maui Bliss. The comments underneath were worse than the images. "You guys look amazing! So glad you finally got away. Where's Grandma Betty?" That last one stung. One of Lucy's school friends, probably. It had no replies. Just sat there like an open wound in the comment section. I closed the app. At 11 o'clock, the mail came. I shuffled to the door like usual. Slippers, cardigan, breath short from the walk. There was a flyer for patio furniture, a water bill, and a letter from my bank. Nothing new, nothing kind. I sat back down at the table and stared at the drawer where I kept my receipts, my paperwork, my little records of everything I'd ever done for the family. It wasn't one of those tidy drawers. It was full of half-sorted manila folders, envelopes, a few handwritten notes with amounts circled in red ink. My shorthand for loaned but never returned. I pulled it open. The first thing I found was the receipt for Lucy's summer camp 2 years ago. $1.250, paid with my Visa. Karen had called me crying that week. "Mom, I hate to ask, but she's been looking forward to this for months." I'd said yes before she finished the sentence. Next, a payment slip for Greg's dental work. $900. I remembered the way he said, "It's temporary, Betty, just until the bonus comes through." The bonus must have come through. He'd bought a new fishing kayak not long after. Then came the bank transfer log, Evan's freshman year dorm deposit, Lucy's ballet lessons, Karen's broken-down Subaru that needed just a little help to get through the year. I kept going. Pages and pages, amounts and dates and small justifications scribbled beside them. Karen said she'd pay next month. Greg promised to call back. For Lucy, she deserves the trip. By the end, I was looking at over $38,000, not including the grocery bags, babysitting hours, or birthday checks that never got a thank you. For a moment, I thought, maybe I've been foolish. But no, foolish is too soft a word. I've been used. Softened over the years like old bread, easy to chew, easier to forget. I closed the folder and stood up slowly, knees aching. Walked to the phone. I didn't call Karen. I didn't call Greg. I called my bank. The woman on the other end was brisk but polite. "Yes, Mrs. Manners, I can assist you with changing automatic transfers. Would you like to cancel the monthly deposit to KJ Miller ending in account 9241? "Yes," I said. "And the one to GL Miller, too." "All right, I've made those changes. Is there anything else?" "Yes," I said again, more quietly. "Could you help me set up a new savings account? Just in my name." "Of course." I wrote the account number down in my neatest script. Then I placed it in the drawer, on top of the receipts, on top of the broken promises. They went to Hawaii without me. But that was the last thing they'd take. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't scream. It doesn't announce itself with drama or thunder. It just settles in, like dust on old furniture, slow, silent, and suddenly everywhere. I noticed it more in the little things that day. The quiet hum of the refrigerator, the half-wilted flowers in the vase on the counter, the way my house felt, empty, not just of people, but of purpose. I didn't cry. Not anymore. I'd already shed the kind of tears that ache behind your eyes. Now I was just still, like a clock with no battery. But stillness has its uses. It lets you see clearly. And what I saw, clearer than ever, was that I had become an afterthought, a background fixture in their lives, useful only when needed, invisible when not. Around noon, I decided to walk. Not far, just to the park 4 blocks down. I used to walk there with Evan when he was little. He liked to collect leaves and pretend they were secret letters from the trees. I always played along. That boy had a wild imagination. The bench by the pond was still there, though a little more rusted than I remembered. I sat, ignoring the ache in my knees. Across the water, 2 young mothers pushed strollers. A man jogged by with his dog. Life kept moving. I thought about calling Karen, just to ask why. Not to argue. I don't raise my voice. But maybe to hear some version of the truth. Then I imagined her voice, rushed, apologetic, full of explanations that wouldn't mean anything. It was Greg's idea, Mom. Or worse, we didn't think you'd want to come. As if 78 means I no longer want. Instead, I went home. The mail had brought nothing new. A catalog, a reminder for a dental appointment I'd already canceled. I left them on the counter and poured myself some water. No ice. My teeth don't like it anymore. That evening, as the light began to fade, I got a text from Lucy. "Hi, Grandma. Hawaii is amazing. Just wanted to say hi. Miss you." I stared at the screen for a long time. Miss me? Was that guilt I heard, or just a phrase tossed in like sprinkles on a cake? I typed back slowly. "Hope you're having a good time. Love you too." I didn't ask why I wasn't there. I didn't ask who decided to leave me behind, because I already knew. The next day, I pulled out the blue binder labeled legal. It was George's idea, back when his hands had started to shake, and we both realized time wasn't something you could argue with. The binder held our wills, the deed to the house, insurance papers, and a copy of the durable power of attorney, the one giving Karen control over my finances if anything ever happened. I looked at that paper a long time. Then I called my lawyer. Miriam still had the same firm handshake and the same silver bangles on her wrist. She didn't ask why I wanted to change things. She just listened as I explained, in measured tones, that I no longer felt comfortable with the current setup. "I'd like to revoke the power of attorney," I said. Miriam nodded. "You're absolutely within your rights. Shall we establish a new one?" "No," I said. "Not for now." She glanced at me. "And the will?" I hesitated. Then I opened my purse and took out the note I'd written that morning. Just 4 names. One was circled. "Yes, I want to make some changes." Miriam didn't ask questions. She knew better. After all, she was there when George signed the first version. She knew the family, knew the patterns. By the time I left her office, the air felt different, lighter, like I'd stopped dragging something invisible behind me. On the drive home, I still drive, just not far. I passed the florist where Karen once worked. I remembered the Mother's Day bouquet she sent last year. It had come with a note that said, "Thanks for everything, Mom. Couldn't do life without you." But apparently, she could do Hawaii without me. I turned the corner and pulled into my driveway. The porch light flickered, like always. The same old creak of the step. The same wind chimes George hung up 20 years ago, still catching every change in the air. I stood there a moment longer before going in. Let the wind blow. Let the chimes ring. Something was changing. And this time, it was mine. That evening, I sat at the dining table and opened the yellow notebook I kept hidden behind the cookbooks no one ever asked for anymore. It wasn't fancy, just a spiral-bound pad I picked up at a pharmacy one day, thinking I'd use it to write recipes. But over time, it had become something else entirely, a quiet accounting of everything I'd given, lent, or signed off on. Page after page, neat columns in my handwriting, date, amount, reason. October 2011, $500, Lucy's braces down payment. May 2013, $2,000, Greg's car repairs, emergency. August 2016, $400, Karen, rent shortfall after job switch. December 2017, $200, Christmas gifts when Greg's bonus didn't come. April 2019, $900, Lucy's college deposit. We'll pay you back by summer. Each line was followed by silence. No repayments, no mentions, just more requests. It had started innocently, a little help here, a small loan there, and every time I'd said yes. Not because I believed they'd pay me back, but because I wanted to be needed. It was the only way they came to me. Some part of me knew that years ago, but I wasn't ready to name it. Now I was. I flipped to the last page and added a new line. August 2025, $0. Trip to Hawaii. Exclusion not financial, but felt. It felt petty, even writing it down. But it also felt honest. And I had learned, finally, to stop apologizing for honesty. I put the notebook back in its hiding place, behind the books with worn covers and recipes no one asked for anymore. Then I made tea. The next morning, I called Social Security and asked to confirm a few things about my monthly benefits, just enough to feel grounded. The woman on the line was kind. Yes, ma'am. Your deposit is scheduled for the 3rd of each month. Would you like to set up a secondary notification? No, thank you, I said. I'd just like to know what's mine. It was such a small sentence, but it rang inside me like a bell. I'd just like to know what's mine. Later, I walked to the pharmacy to pick up my medication. The pharmacist, a young man with nervous eyes, greeted me with that careful tone they use on the elderly, as if we might crack or collapse if spoken to too quickly. Mrs. Manners, your refill is ready. That'll be $147. I handed him my card. He glanced at it and frowned. Didn't your daughter say she usually picks this up? She's on vacation, I said, smiling just enough to sting. He didn't know how to reply. I didn't care. I carried the brown paper bag home with both hands, slowly, step by step. Not because I was tired, but because I wanted to feel each step. The rhythm of it. The control. Back home, I sat on the porch. The late summer sun was soft, not hot anymore. The trees rustled above me. The same ones George used to trim every fall. I could almost see him up on the ladder, shouting down advice I didn't need. I smiled at the memory. It didn't ache as much as it used to. The phone rang just after 5. It was Karen. I stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds before I answered. Hi, Mom, she said. Her voice was bright. Too bright. We just got back this morning. So I saw, I said. Calm. Not cold. Just clear. There was a pause. She wasn't expecting that. Oh, Evan must have posted something, huh? A little laugh. You know how kids are. He wasn't hiding anything, I said. He's never had a reason to. Another pause. Longer. Mom, I meant to call you while we were there. Things just got hectic. Must have been. Maui looks busy this time of year. Mom, please don't be like that. Like what? I asked, still calm. Like someone who found out she wasn't invited after she bought sunscreen just in case? I could hear her inhale sharply. Then the voice I knew too well. the one that wore guilt like perfume but never truly absorbed it. It wasn't that we didn't want you there. It just felt like a lot. With the flight and the walking. We thought it might be too much. I see, I said. You decided what I could handle. Mom, please. No need to explain, I said. I understand perfectly now. And for the first time in years, I meant it. She stumbled through a few more words, half excuses, half apologies, but I let them wash over me. I was done fishing for sincerity in shallow water. When we hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still. The kind of still that comes not from weakness, but from resolve. Let them scramble. Let them wonder how far I'd go. I wasn't going anywhere. I was already home. The next Monday, I walked into my bank branch for the first time in over a year. I could have called again, done everything online, but I didn't want that. I wanted someone to look me in the eye when I said the words. I wanted to remind myself I still existed in the real world, not just as a number or a mother in the background of other people's lives. The young man at the front desk smiled as I approached. He couldn't have been more than 30. Good morning, ma'am. Can I help you? Yes, I said. I need to review my accounts, and I'd like to speak to a manager. His smile faltered just slightly, but he nodded. Absolutely. Let me see who's available. They put me in a little office with glass walls and soft music playing from a ceiling speaker. It was meant to feel safe, I suppose. Contained. But to me, it felt exposed, like I was on display. The elderly woman in her pressed blouse and handbag, doing some important financial thing, as if she were still in charge of anything. The manager came in, a woman this time. Probably my daughter's age, though with a firmer handshake. I'm Clara, she said. How can I help you today, Mrs. Manners? I'd like to update the beneficiaries on my accounts, I said. She blinked once, then reached for a folder. Of course. Do you have the names? I do. I handed her a folded piece of paper. She opened it, read, then looked up at me. No Greg? No Karen? No. She didn't ask why, just started typing. And you'd like to assign only your granddaughter, Lucy? That's right. And I'd like to attach a note. Can you do that? She hesitated. We can attach a personal message for internal records, but it won't be legally binding. That's fine. I just want something written down. She nodded, opened a field, and asked, What would you like it to say? I didn't pause. To Lucy. This is for all the times you showed up, and for all the things you never asked for. Clara typed. Her eyes lingered on the screen a moment, then she turned it around for me to read. I nodded. Before I left, I asked to cancel the joint access Karen had set up years ago, the one that let her move money in case of emergency. Clara didn't flinch. She handled it quickly, professionally. But I saw something shift in her face as I signed the form. A flicker of respect, maybe. Or recognition. Back home, I boiled an egg and made toast. Ate slowly, deliberately. Thought about how I'd spent the last 20 years calling what I did help and what they did being busy. That afternoon, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Hi, Grandma. It was Lucy. Hello, sweetheart. A pause. Then, in a smaller voice, I think I messed up. What do you mean? I knew about the trip. I mean, I didn't know they weren't inviting you. I assumed. Assumed what? That you said no. That maybe you didn't feel up to it. I listened to her breathing on the other end. They said it wasn't your kind of vacation. That you'd be more comfortable at home. I see. But then Evan told me what you said. And I don't know. It doesn't feel right. It hasn't felt right since we landed. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "You're not responsible for their choices, Lucy. You're only responsible for what you do next." Another pause. "I want to come over," she said. "Not now, just sometime this week, if that's okay." "It's more than okay." She hung up quietly. That evening, I pulled out my sewing box. Not because I needed to fix anything. I just wanted to feel something familiar in my hands. The weight of scissors. The comfort of old thread. I sat by the window, watching the porch light flicker, and let the silence wrap around me. Not like loneliness, but like space. Space to choose. Space to breathe. Space to finally become more than someone else's afterthought. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't waiting for anyone. I took out the photo albums that night. The real ones, not digital. Not scrolling and double tapping and pretending that fleeting hearts meant anything. Just thick, leather-bound books with plastic sleeves and faded ink in the corners. George had always labeled them meticulously. Florida, 82. Easter, Karen, age 9. Greg's first promotion. His handwriting was a kind of quiet confidence, square, sure, careful. I traced the letters with my finger. He had always believed in order, in record keeping, in leaving behind something others could understand when you were gone. I flipped through the pages slowly. There we were on the front porch of our old house, Karen holding a popsicle, barefoot. Me in a sundress I'd sewn myself. George behind the camera, I could tell by the way my eyes weren't quite looking at the lens. I was looking at him. I turned another page. Christmases. Birthdays. Picnics with plastic chairs and foil-wrapped sandwiches. Karen's wedding day, her eyes half glossed with nerves, and me straightening her veil with hands that had packed her lunch 1,000 times. George standing beside her like the proudest man on earth. And then, the newer ones. Lucy's kindergarten graduation. Evan in a Halloween costume I made from scratch. Photos where I wasn't smiling as widely, though I couldn't explain why. Just something in the eyes. The quiet shrinking of presence. The invisible seat being pulled away, one polite smile at a time. In the last album, there were fewer pictures, more space between events, as if my existence had become more occasional. I closed the book and set it gently on the table. It wasn't sadness I felt. Not exactly. It was clarity. The kind that comes late but lands hard. They'd kept moving, and somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being invited to the motion. I reached for the small notebook I kept by the phone, the one where I wrote things I didn't want to forget. Doctor's appointments. Grocery lists. Passwords I could never remember. I turned to a blank page and wrote, "I have given. I have waited. I have stayed silent. That season is over." I underlined it once. The next morning, I called Miriam again. "There's something else," I said. "Something I want in writing." She met me at her office that afternoon, a fresh notepad already out. "I want to establish a trust," I told her. "Not for my estate, for my freedom." She raised her eyebrows. "That's a new one." "I want to separate myself from any financial link to Karen and Greg. Legally, completely. I want to make sure they can't reverse what I've changed, not now, not after I'm gone." Miriam leaned forward. "That's a very serious decision, Betty." "I know," I said, "and it's mine to make." She started drafting the documents. By the time we finished, the sun was lower in the sky, streaking the windows gold. I stood to leave, and she looked at me for a long moment before saying, "You look taller." I laughed. "Maybe it's the shoes." But it wasn't. On the way home, I stopped by the grocery store, bought exactly what I liked. Nothing for anyone else. Salmon, sourdough, a small box of strawberries, a pint of mint chip ice cream. It felt like writing a love letter to myself in items and aisle numbers. Back at home, I made dinner, set the table for one, and did not apologize to the empty chairs. When the phone rang later, I didn't even check the screen. I let it buzz and fade. Not every call needs to be answered. Not every silence needs to be filled. Some things are better off sitting quiet. Just like truth. Just like me, at my own table, finally eating while the food is hot. The calls started on Thursday. First it was Karen, 2 missed ones in the morning, then a voicemail I didn't check. Then Greg, once in the afternoon, and again just before dinner. No message. Just the number on the screen like a knock I didn't feel like opening the door to. By Friday morning, there were 5 missed calls between the two of them. I didn't answer any of them. Not out of spite, not to punish. I just didn't feel like explaining something that no longer needed explanation. They had their chance to talk when it mattered. They chose silence. Now it was mine. Instead, I cleaned out the pantry, tossed expired cans, donated the good ones I knew I'd never eat, wiped shelves I hadn't looked at closely in years. It felt oddly satisfying, like clearing out a corner of myself. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I knew before I opened it that it would be Karen. She stood there in a crisp blouse and jeans that looked carefully casual, her hair pulled back, her face already set in that half-smile she wore when she was nervous but trying not to show it. "Hi, Mom." I opened the door but didn't step aside. "I called," she said. "I know." She shifted her weight. "Can I come in?" I nodded and moved enough for her to pass. She stepped in like a visitor, careful, quiet, glancing around the living room as if something might have changed. Nothing had, of course. Same couch, same old throw blanket, same photo of George on the mantel. She sat down, hands clasped in her lap. "You didn't tell me you were changing the accounts." I sat across from her. "You didn't tell me you were going to Maui." Her jaw tightened. "That's not the same thing," she said. "It is to me." A silence stretched between us, taut as string. She broke first. "We thought it would be easier, that it might be too much for you, the flight, the walking, the heat." "You thought," I repeated. She sighed. "We weren't trying to hurt you. You just didn't think I'd notice." "I made a mistake." "You made a choice," I said. "There's a difference." Karen looked down at her hands. Her voice got quieter. "You've always been there, Mom. Always helped. Always said yes. I think I stopped asking if I was being fair. I just took. I'm sorry." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I raised you to be kind, to be fair, to think about other people. I know. And I didn't do any of that." Another silence. This one softer. I stood, walked to the kitchen, came back with 2 cups of tea, set one in front of her. She took it without a word. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. I was. But I'm not now. She nodded, eyes glassy. "I'm also not going to pretend it didn't happen, or go back to the way things were. I won't be your safety net anymore, your fallback, your invisible help. I understand. I'm not sure you do. But I hope you will." She blinked fast, then looked up at me. "I miss you," she said. "I miss the version of you that saw me." We sat in silence a while, tea cooling in our cups. When she stood to leave, she hugged me. I didn't step back, but I didn't lean in either. It was a hug between people who used to know each other better. As I closed the door behind her, I felt tired, but not drained. Boundaries, it turns out, aren't walls. They're doors you choose when to open and when to keep shut. Greg came the next day. Not with flowers, not with an apology, with questions. He didn't even call first, just showed up around 3 in the afternoon, the way someone does when they think their presence alone will settle things. He had on that same athletic jacket he always wore to barbecues, like he might be heading to a golf course any minute. I saw him through the window. For a second, I debated not answering. But I did. He stood on the porch, arms crossed. "Hey, Betty." I didn't return the greeting. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, but I didn't offer him a seat. He walked into the living room and looked around like he was checking for damage. Karen must have told him everything. He turned to face me. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but we're all kind of confused here. Karen said you changed some financial stuff?" I nodded. He let out a breath through his nose. "Okay, that's your right, of course. But we're just wondering what this is really about." I raised an eyebrow. "You went on vacation," I said. "You left me behind. You lied." He threw up a hand. "We didn't lie. We didn't include you." "That's a distinction you should be careful making," I said, "especially in a house built on things you didn't pay for." His eyes narrowed. "Are you saying all this is about money?" "No. I'm saying it's about value." Greg sat down then, uninvited. Spread his legs wide, elbows on knees. The pose of someone used to being listened to. "Betty, listen. We're all a little tired, okay? It's been a rough year. Karen's job is stressful, and I've got the business to run. And the kids, you don't have to list your burdens," I said. "I know them. I've paid for half of them." He blinked. "I'm not angry anymore, Greg. I'm just done pretending I owe you anything. That's not how families work." "No," I said. "But that is how dignity works." He stood, slowly. "You know, Karen's really upset. She feels awful. Then she can learn something from that feeling. This whole thing, it's not like you," he said. "No," I said. "But maybe you never knew me that well." He frowned, looked at the mantel, at George's photo. He wouldn't have liked this. I took a step closer. George would have never left me behind. Greg didn't reply. At the door, he turned. "So what now? You just cut everyone off?" "No," I said. "I stopped being a silent investor in a family that won't even save me a seat at the table." He looked like he wanted to say more, but didn't. When the door closed behind him, I felt no triumph. Just air. Clear and still. I made a sandwich. Watched the late light settle across the floor like a promise. And for the first time in years, I didn't worry who would be upset with me next. Lucy came over on Sunday. She didn't knock, just texted, "I'm on the porch. Is it okay?" I opened the door and there she was, sitting on the steps with her knees pulled up, wearing a hoodie too big for her and sneakers that had seen better days. Her hair was messy in a way I'd never seen before. Not styled messy, just real. Unbrushed. Honest. I stepped aside. "Come in." She walked in slowly, like someone trying to figure out whether they were still welcome. I didn't rush her. Some things need to be done at a person's own pace. She stood in the middle of the living room, looking around, then at me. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "For assuming you didn't matter." I didn't expect her to say that. Not like that. She sat down, curled one leg under herself. "They told me it would be too much for you. The trip, the walking. I didn't question it. I just went along. Ate pineapple by the pool. Took pictures of sunsets. And you didn't think to ask?" "I did, once. I asked why you weren't coming. Mom said you needed rest, that you'd be happier at home. And I just believed it. Because it was easier than thinking they'd lie." I sat across from her. "You know what hurts most?" I asked. that no one thought I might be the kind of woman who'd want to see a sunset from somewhere new, that I might still want to belong. She looked down. "I do see you," she said. "Now." I believed her, not just because I wanted to, but because her face didn't flinch when she said it. "I made you something," she added, digging into her tote bag. She pulled out a small photo album, handmade, cardboard cover wrapped in fabric, little stitches at the spine. She handed it to me. Inside were photos from the trip, but not the ones I'd seen online. These were quieter. Lucy reading on the balcony, the edge of a page caught in the wind. Greg and Karen asleep in lounge chairs, unaware. A seashell with my name written on it in pen. I turned the pages slowly. On the last page, a note written in blue ink. "This is what I should have shared with you the first time. I want to do better." I closed the album and looked at her. "Thank you." We sat a while in silence. Not the kind that fills space with awkwardness. The kind that lets it breathe. "Can I come next Sunday?" she asked. "Just to hang out?" "You don't have to ask," I said. "You just have to come." She smiled. The kind that didn't reach her mouth but settled somewhere behind the eyes. Later, after she left, I placed the album on the shelf beside the others. It didn't match. It wasn't labeled in George's handwriting, but it was the first one in years that felt like it belonged. And that was enough. Monday came with a kind of quiet I hadn't felt in years. Not the silence of waiting for a phone to ring or footsteps at the door, but the silence of a room that didn't need anything from me. I watered the plants, cleaned the windowsills, took my time folding laundry I used to rush through. Around mid-morning, the lawyer called. "The trust documents are finalized, Mrs. Manners. Do you want to come in and sign this week?" "Yes," I said. "Let's do tomorrow." I hung up and stood still in the kitchen, the phone still warm in my hand. It was happening. No more shared access, no more surprise withdrawals, no more invisible hands reaching into what was mine. I had let them treat me like background, a utility, and now I was choosing the opposite, not revenge, but recognition. After lunch, I got the mail, bills, coupons, and a handwritten letter. From Greg. It was folded neatly, addressed in his blocky print, the kind he used when filling out permission slips for the kids. I opened it slowly, already bracing for the tone. "Betty, I know you think I don't care, that I only show up when things go sideways. Maybe you're right. But I want you to know that I never meant for you to feel used. We've leaned on you more than we should have. I see that now. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I've always respected you, even when I didn't say it. Maybe especially then. I hope we find our way back. Greg." I read it twice, then folded it again and set it in the drawer. I didn't know if I believed all of it, but it was more than I'd expected. I spent the rest of the day in the garden, pulled weeds, pruned the rose bushes George planted when Karen was born. They were overgrown, wild, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with order. Just before dinner, Lucy texted, "Grandma, can I bring something Sunday? Cookies? Or a photo I painted of your porch?" I smiled, wrote back, "Bring yourself. That's more than enough." I slept well that night. Not because everything was fixed, but because I had finally stopped asking to be seen. The next morning, I walked into Miriam's office with steady steps. She had the papers ready, already clipped and highlighted. "You're sure?" she asked. I nodded. "Then sign here, and here. One more." 3 strokes of the pen, and I was no longer someone else's silent safety net. On the way out, I passed a woman in the lobby, maybe my age, maybe older. She had that same look I used to carry, polite, careful, worn thin by too many favors unreturned. Our eyes met for just a second. I didn't say anything, but in that glance, I hoped she saw something in me that said, "You can say no. You're allowed to choose yourself." Because I had. And the sky didn't fall. It just opened up a little wider. Wednesday morning, I brewed coffee and poured it into the good china. Not because anyone was visiting, but because I finally understood I didn't need an occasion to treat myself kindly. For years, the porcelain cups sat untouched in the cabinet, waiting for birthdays, holidays, or guests who never stayed long. Now it was just me, and that was reason enough. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping slowly, listening to the ticking clock above the stove. George's clock. Still running. Still right twice a day, even when the battery falters. The phone rang. It was Miriam. "Just confirming. The revised will has been filed. You're all set, Betty." I thanked her. Hung up. I'd removed Karen and Greg from the inheritance. Everything now would go to Lucy, with a clause stating it was contingent on her finishing school and making her own way without using my money to patch their holes. I didn't write that to punish her. I wrote it to protect her. No one else needed to know. Not yet. The doorbell rang mid-afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Karen stood there again, this time holding a small box. "I baked something," she said. I looked at the box. Lemon squares, her specialty, back when she used to show up on weekends. "I wasn't sure if you'd answer," she added. I almost didn't. She held the box out. I took it, more out of curiosity than anything else. "I wanted to try again," she said. "Not just with words." "Then stop coming here like you're visiting a patient." Her face changed. "Is that how it feels?" "Sometimes." We sat in the living room again, this time with tea and lemon squares. They were good, but I didn't say so. Karen looked older to me that day, not just in her face, in her silence. The kind that comes when excuses start to sound like noise, even to the person making them. "I know I've let you down," she said. "I don't know how to fix it." "You don't," I replied. "Some things aren't fixable, but they can be faced." She nodded. "Greg said he came by." "I know." She looked at her lap. "He's scared. About the money." I tilted my head. "And you?" "I'm ashamed, but also relieved that you finally said something." We didn't talk about the will, or the trust, or the savings accounts that no longer carried their names. Some truths are too heavy to carry into a casual conversation. Instead, we talked about Lucy, about how she wanted to switch majors, about how she hated the cafeteria food, but loved the quiet of the library. And for a brief moment, we were just mother and daughter, passing time the way we used to, before life got messy with mortgages and favors and silence. When Karen left, she hugged me tighter this time. No performance. Just wait. And maybe, the beginning of something real. I washed the china cup by hand, dried it gently, placed it back on the shelf, but this time, not as something to be saved, as something that had already served. Thursday. I walked down to the old community center 2 blocks away. I hadn't been there in years, not since George's memorial, when we rented the back room for the coffee and cookies. Everything still smelled faintly of wood polish and lemon cleaner. There was a flyer on the bulletin board that caught my eye. Silver Circle, a gathering space for women 65 plus. Stories, coffee, real talk. Thursdays at 10. It was 10:07. I hesitated at the door, hand hovering over the knob. Part of me still expected to be in the way. Too old, too new, too something. But the woman who opened the door had silver braids and bright eyes and said, "Come in, hun. We're just getting started." I did. There were 8 of us that day. All women. All older than I used to think women could be when they still laughed like that. One brought banana bread. Another had a stack of library books she passed around. They made room for me without question. We sat in a circle of folding chairs that creaked a little when someone leaned back. No one asked where my children were. No one asked who I used to be. They just let me be there. We talked about knee pain, recipes, the ridiculous price of cucumbers. And then someone, a woman named Hattie, said, "My son hasn't called in 6 weeks. I used to chase it. Now I let the silence say what it says." Everyone nodded. I did too. Afterward, we cleaned up together. I offered to bring something next time. They said, "Just bring yourself." I walked home lighter. In the afternoon, I read a book by the window, drank tea, let the sun stretch across the floor without rushing to meet it. Lucy came by in the evening. No warning. Just a knock and her soft voice. "It's me." She carried a painting under her arm, the one she mentioned before. My porch, done in watercolor. The flower pots, the worn railing, the light fixture that flickered when it rained. She'd gotten every detail right. "It's beautiful," I said. "I thought maybe you could hang it inside," she offered, "for when it's too cold to sit out." I looked at her then, really looked. Her face still had the softness of someone young, but her eyes were sharper now, awake in a new way. "I'm not cold yet," I said. She laughed. "No, I didn't think so." We made tea. She told me about her classes, her roommate's obsession with houseplants, the old professor who always wore mismatched socks. I listened, not as someone being filled in, but as someone finally being let in. After she left, I stood in the doorway a long time, holding the painting against my chest. This life, this quiet, earned, rearranged life, was starting to feel like mine. Not the version I gave away, not the one I waited for others to value, but the one I chose. And that was enough. Friday morning, I received a letter from the law office confirming all filings had been completed. The trust was active, the revised will on record, everything done, locked, witnessed, signed. There was no drama to it, no gavel hitting wood, no one storming out. Just 2 pages in a beige envelope and a quiet finality that came with knowing. No one could undo this. Not Karen, not Greg, not their pleas or promises or performances. I made myself a soft-boiled egg. Toasted the sourdough just the way I like, browned, never burnt. Ate slowly, chewed with care. My body was still mine. My choices, too. Around 10, the phone rang. Karen again. I let it ring once, twice. On the third, I picked up. "Hi, Mom," she said, voice tentative. "You free for lunch?" I paused. "Just tea. My kitchen. Noon." When she arrived, she brought flowers. The kind I used to love. Tulips, orange and red, like little flames. She placed them on the table like an offering. "I thought we could talk," she said. "I thought we already did." She nodded, nervously smoothing the edges of her sleeve. "I talked to Greg," she said. "He's angry. That's his choice. And confused. That's also his." She swallowed. "I told him I don't blame you, that you're allowed to change your mind about all of it." I poured the tea. "I never realized," she continued, "how much of your life was wrapped around us." "It was never about realizing," I said. "It was about noticing." She looked down at her cup. "I think I got used to you being the one who would never say no." "That was your mistake," I said gently. "And mine was letting you think it would last forever." She didn't speak for a while. Neither did I. Then she asked, "Is it too late?" "For what?" "To matter again. Differently this time." I took a breath. Let it sit between us. It's never too late, I said. But it's not automatic. You don't get to skip the work. I know. No, Karen. You hope. But now you'll have to know it. And act like you do. She blinked fast, nodded. You won't be punished, I said. But you also won't be prioritized anymore. That's the difference. And that's what you earned. I understand. I hope someday you'll feel it instead. She stood, slowly. Thank you for the tea. Thank you for not calling it a talk. When she left, I looked at the flowers a long time. They were lovely. But I didn't put them in the center of the table. I placed them near the back window, where the light hits in the late afternoon. Something beautiful, visible, but no longer the focal point. That evening, Lucy called. Mom's quiet tonight, she said. She's thinking. You okay? I'm better than okay. I'm free. Lucy was silent for a beat. Then she whispered, Good. After we hung up, I stood in the yard, breathing in the scent of cut grass and tulips. There was no going back. And for the first time, I didn't want to. Sunday evening, I received a text from Lucy. Would you come to dinner? Everyone's going to be there. I'll sit next to you. I stared at the message for a long while. My first instinct was to say no. I didn't want a performance. I didn't want tense small talk or forced laughter or the kind of apology that's more about relief than remorse. But it was Lucy asking. So I replied, Yes, I'll bring dessert. I arrived just after 6. Greg opened the door, stepped aside without a word. His face was neutral, not angry, not warm. Karen hovered behind him, smoothing her blouse, eyes darting. The dining table was set for 6. Evan greeted me with a quiet hug, and Lucy pulled out the chair beside hers. The one with the best light, the best view of the backyard, where a single string of lights still hung from their last celebration. I wondered, idly, if they'd noticed how long they'd left them there. Dinner was roast chicken, overcooked slightly. Karen apologized for that. I said it was fine. The conversation meandered. Evan's new internship, Lucy's favorite class, something about Greg's office downsizing. I offered no advice, no solutions. Just listened. Occasionally nodded. It wasn't tense. It wasn't warm. It just was. Halfway through the meal, Karen cleared her throat. I know this doesn't fix anything, she said. But thank you for coming, for giving us the chance to show up better. Greg said nothing, just kept cutting his meat. I didn't come for you, I said. I came for Lucy. And for myself. Karen looked down. Still, thank you. We moved on. I passed the green beans. Evan refilled water glasses. Someone laughed briefly at an old story from a beach trip years ago. Not the most recent one. After dessert, a cobbler I made from scratch, I stood to leave. Lucy followed me to the door, coat already over her arm. Can I walk you home? She asked. You don't need to. I know, she said, but I want to. The walk was quiet. Just gravel under our shoes and the low hum of porch lights flicking on one by one. They're trying, she said eventually. I'm not interested in trying anymore, I replied. I'm interested in truth and time and being known, not managed. Lucy nodded. I see you. I stopped walking. Say that again. She looked up at me, steady. I see you. No one had ever said it to me like that before. Not in 78 years. Not even George. I touched her cheek, gently. Don't forget how to do that. I won't? At my door, she hugged me. Not tightly, just honestly. And when I stepped inside and closed the door, the quiet felt like safety, not isolation. They'd said the family trip was canceled. They'd smiled on a beach without me. But I had walked home in the dark and didn't feel alone. I woke up Monday morning before the sun. No reason, no alarm, just that gentle nudge from within, the kind that tells you the day holds something new, even if it doesn't say what. I made tea and sat by the window. The sky was still dark, but softening. A deep, quiet blue. Birds hadn't started yet. The world was still holding its breath. I watched the light come back. Not in a rush. Not with fanfare. Just steady. At 8, I got dressed and opened the little cedar box on my dresser, the one where I kept things too private for drawers. George's cufflink, a photo of Karen at 10, holding her science fair ribbon, the first card Lucy ever wrote me in her own uneven print. I added one thing, a slip of paper that read, "I see you," folded it, tucked it between the ribbon and the cufflink, closed the lid. At 9, I walked to the community center. Silver Circle was fuller this time. New faces. A new woman who wore bright earrings and said her daughter hadn't spoken to her in 3 years. No one asked why. We just nodded and made space. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't tell the whole story. I just said, "This year, I remembered I was a person, not a function." They nodded. Someone reached across and squeezed my hand. Afterward, Hattie offered me a ride home. I said no. I wanted to walk. Feel the sun. Let it touch my face the way it used to when I was young and didn't know I'd spend decades letting people take pieces of me without asking. On the walk, I passed the house with the blue door. A boy sat on the stoop, drawing something on the concrete with chalk. He looked up and smiled. Just that. It was enough. Back home, I watered the plants, picked up the book I'd been reading, let myself nap for 20 minutes in the sun patch on the floor. No calls came that day. No new apologies. And I didn't need them. I had my porch, my name, my choice, my life, reshaped, reclaimed, recentered. If you've read this far, maybe you've been there too. Invisible. Useful. Dismissed in small, soft ways that leave deep, sharp cuts. Maybe no one took you to Hawaii, but maybe now, right now, you can take yourself somewhere better. Even if it starts with something small. A cup of tea in the good china. A walk in shoes you chose. A quiet moment where no one gets to speak louder than your own knowing. If this story spoke to you, share it. Leave a comment, or simply sit still and let it echo. That too is a kind of victory.